we don't know whether we, gone a millimeter out of a mile, or, a kilometer. We don't really know. I somehow don't expect to read a paper where I'll get the answer this year.
Yeah, but
if I was young, say 20 years old, that's what I'd go try and do. And because
if you were 25 years old, the thing that you would set out to do would not find the structure of DNA, which has been done, but would be to find out how the mind works.
Yeah, but you better set out at 15. 25 is too late. You really have got to, and that's, the importance of education, of trying to tell people that, when did you become interested in ants? I bet it was a pretty early
9 years old. And if you're about to ask me what I would do if I were 25,
yes, I am.
I would not try that. There's too many bright people already trying it. And besides, it would keep me in the laboratory, and I'll be darned if I'll take up anything that doesn't allow me to get out in the field.
And watch ants run around.
I'm fundamentally a field biologist because that's the way I was born, that's the way I was made.
Do you both think there was a reason you went to where you were in terms of scientific inquiry?
Sure.
And it was because you wanted to be outside and...
Yeah. I wanted a job in nature, exploring animals and plants. Biodiversity, I didn't know at that time that would be the word, or that I would be dealing in biodiversity science. But basically, I wanted to be outdoors exploring all the time, and I wanted to be a scientist while I did it.
And you? Why molecular biology having to do with the structure of life?
Oh, because, my father, having rejected religion and said that you could, explain life in terms of physics and chemistry, I wanted to show it could be done. So, merely saying it's based on physics and chemistry isn't very convincing until you show it's based on physics and chemistry. So I think it was... it just seemed so important, to finally get it right.
That's right. Yeah.
So that you had a solid base on which to think. And so, among people who know it, there's no controversy about evolution. It is the most, it is so true. I mean...
Well, you say to accept it you had a phrase I read somewhere where you said not to accept evolution is to deny common sense.
Yes.
That was a quote.
Yes. But the people that's common sense for a scientist, but people who aren't scientists, they don't know how we think, so it's easy for them to deny it, but they don't have these sort of rules which make it impossible for me to question it.
Let me go back to Darwin. Has anything that Darwin suggested been disproven or modified? Well, now, we know it was added to by what Jim did.
Jim may want to talk about it, but he did have the wrong theory of heredity.
Yes, that was the thing.
How did that work? What was it?
Oh, Ed, you best say it.
Well, I may slip up on that because I'm not an expert on Darwin's one erroneous idea, which was it was blending heredity. That's really what he thought. He thought there was something like liquids that you got from mom, you got your dad, and but
so it didn't have the discreteness of Mendel. That's
right. That's why Mendel then came for it. But Darwin could have figured that out because he was preoccupied throughout his life with what was called sports in those days. Yes. And they even knew about somatic mutations. That is, sudden changes in the cell that occupy just one cell or a little bit of tissue, and single changes that were very discrete. Darwin could have reasoned out some kind of particular heredity.
But it wouldn't have convinced him, or wouldn't have convinced anyone else until you had the breeding experiments of Mendel. Yeah. And then they were so important.
Okay. Back to Darwin's life. After the voyage on the HMS Beagle, 1831, he never left England again. Is there any explanation for that? Well, he'd done all the research, he had all the material, he wanted just to figure out what it said?
I think if you really realize what he did at the Voyage of the Beagle. That was a pretty scary thing.
It was scary.
Yes, I mean, just imagine.
He had a lot of narrow escape.
Yes.
He may have brought back
Disease
with
and
him,
everything else,
Yes.
Yeah, he may have brought back with him, although I guess there's controversy over Chagas disease.
Yeah, because he was sick a lot the rest of his life.
We don't know exactly why, but he got something.
Yeah.
Probably on that.
He might have been drinking milk or something. Who knows?
Who knows? But I don't think he wanted to leave Emma and the kids
Because he had like 10 or 11 kids.
Yeah, 10. And he had that nice place, and he also was able to do a lot of work, experiments with plant growth and earthworm behavior and so on, right there around his estate.
With the certainty that science has about him now, and what contribution that Jim and others have made, what was the response at the time he wrote the book? Did everybody say what?
Enormous response. I mean, it was really...
Eureka?
No, it upset a lot of people, and it was...
It was instantly controversial.
Instantly controversial. The book sold out many copies. It was a bestseller.
Right. It was.
Everybody understood the gravity of it.
Well, there were a number of people, his correspondents, among the scientists who were his allies. And they even knew roughly what the idea was, and they leapt immediately to his defense, most famously Huxley. But there were also...
And Huxley would go defend him in debate.
Oh, yes. But there were also were formidable opponents, the most notable of whom was our predecessor at Harvard, Louis Agassiz.
Yes.
The most powerful figure in American science at that time. And
what was opposed to what he...
Oh, vehemently.
The most powerful figure in American science.
Oh, yes.
Well,
faculty at Harvard.
Biology, I'd say.
Well, I'm speaking of influence and fame. Well, he wasn't much of a scientist. He was, but he had tremendous influence on the public.
Yes.
President Grant.
What was his argument? I mean, what did he use as a basis to reject it? Biblical creation?
I'm not quite sure. He just had, he was a transcendentalist, and he wowed all the audiences by coming down with that transcendentalist view he picked up with him from Emerson and the others. And he said, the world that we live in is the image in God's mind. Now, isn't that a beautiful, great idea? And he wasn't about to give it up to some English country squire who just put a lot of facts together.
That reminds me, wasn't Darwin in some of his writings, this has got to be in here, some really almost poetic about how he described it in the end?
Yes, he was. He was relatively
Can you
plain spoken, but then he would wind up and give us a poetic riff.
Yeah.
He did it at the end of The Descent of Man, with that wonderful expression that, Jim uses it, the indelible stamp. He said, no matter how exalted we think ourselves, how high we have risen, we nevertheless bear the indelible stamp of our lowly origin. And then he did it at the end of The Origin of Species.
Yeah, I have it here.
Okay, give us this. Yes.
There is a grandeur in this view of life, that whilst this planet has gone cycling on according to the fixed laws of gravity, from so simple a beginning, endless forms, most beautiful and most wonderful, have been and are being evolved.
Can Tennyson beat that?
I don't think so.
No, Darwin could have,
That's interesting. Here's a scientist who's a poet.
Yeah.
No, he can write very well. Darwin knew how to write. Beautiful phrases. I mean,
what really has the punch to is the authenticity of it. I mean, in most of our minds, that is, here was a guy who had really established his case, a very powerful new way of looking at a new worldview. So when he comes in with a little bit of poetry at the end, you pay attention.
Yeah.
I mean, the old chill goes down the back. But that wouldn't be the case.
You speak as a man who's won 2 Pulitzer Prizes for the ability to write well about science, sir.
Yeah, okay. So if you consider that stronger praise, yes.
Darwin himself, after he published this, I mean, what was his life about? I mean, because I've read that he mostly spent his time devoted to his children.
Well, a lot of time writing these subsequent books.
Yes, that's right. And he wrote the last one just 11 years before he died, or actually 10 years. And his life was actually very regular and quiet there at Down. He would go out on regular walks, and he would run his experiments and watch nature around him. He would take occasional visits to London, where he visited the British Museum. But basically, he was thinking and writing and writing. There was a servant in the Darwin household who watched this is a story I've got to tell, who watched Mr. Darwin out doing all this, and just looking at things. And one day, Mr. Darwin was sitting and watching a hill of ants a long time, and she spoke and said, they were neighbors of the Thackeray's, incidentally, William Makepeace Thackeray. She said, "What a pity, Mr. Darwin has nothing to fill his time like Mr. Thackeray."
That's great.